I was down to my last $12 when I saw the Craigslist ad. It was sitting there at the top of the gigs section, vague and almost suspiciously short. Babysitter needed for one night, 7 p.m. to midnight, $500 cash. Must follow strict rules. Normally I would have scrolled right past it. It screamed scam or worse. But my life wasn't exactly normal at that moment. My landlord had slid an eviction notice under my door 3 days ago. My fridge contained half a jar of pickles, a bottle of mustard, and an expired yogurt. The hunger was a dull ache in my stomach that never really went away. Desperation has a funny way of making you do stupid things. It turns off the part of your brain that screams danger and replaces it with a calculator. $500. That was rent. That was groceries for a month. So I emailed them. I didn't expect a reply, honestly. But within 10 minutes, my phone buzzed. It was a reply with an address deep in the suburbs and a list of 3 non-negotiable rules written in bold text. 1. Do not open the front door for anyone, even if they sound like us, especially if they sound like us. 2. Do not uncover any mirrors or reflective surfaces. This includes turning off screens. 3. Keep an eye on Caleb, but do not trust what he says. He lies. I stared at the screen. The especially if they sound like us part sent a cold shiver down my spine. But I looked at my empty apartment and I grabbed my keys. I arrived at the house just as the sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the manicured lawns. It was a nice suburban home, the kind you see in movies, but it felt hollow. The windows were dark, like dead eyes staring out at the street. The lawn was perfect, too perfect. Not a single blade of grass out of place. It was quiet. No birds singing, no cars driving by. Just a suffocating silence. I walked up the driveway, my shoes crunching loudly on the gravel. Before I could even raise my hand to knock, the door swung open. The parents were standing there. They were a handsome couple dressed for a gala or a high-end dinner. But their smiles, they were wrong. They were fixed, stretched too wide across their faces, like plastic masks pulled too tight over their skulls. Their eyes didn't smile with their mouths. They just stared. "You must be the sitter," the mother said. Her voice was a little too high-pitched, almost breathless. She didn't blink. "Yeah, that's me," I said, trying to ignore the knot tightening in my stomach. "I got your email." "Caleb is in the living room," she continued, stepping aside but not breaking eye contact. "Great," I managed to say. "Anything else I should know? Allergies? Bedtime?" The father stepped forward then. His presence was intense, overwhelming. He gripped my shoulder, his fingers digging in slightly. "Just the rules. Did you read them?" "Yes." "Especially the mirrors," he hissed, his voice dropping an octave. "Keep them covered. Do not look at yourself. Do not let him look at himself. We'll be back at midnight. Sharp." They handed me a thick white envelope. I could feel the cash inside. Before I could say another word, they walked past me, practically running to their black sedan. They didn't look back. They didn't wave goodbye to their son. They just got in and sped away, tires screeching against the asphalt. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching their taillights disappear. Then I locked the deadbolt. I checked it twice, then a third time. The silence in the house was heavy. It pressed against my ears. I turned around and walked into the living room. That's when I saw the extent of it. Every single reflective surface in the room was covered. The massive flat-screen TV had a thick wool blanket draped over it. The family photos on the walls were taped over with brown construction paper. Even the glass front of the fireplace was blocked by a piece of cardboard. The windows had heavy blackout curtains drawn tight, taped to the walls at the edges so not even a sliver of the outside world could reflect in. Caleb was sitting on the rug in the center of the room. He was about 7 years old, pale, with hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in a week. He was coloring in a book with a black crayon. "Hey, Caleb," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "I'm your sitter for tonight." He didn't stop coloring. He just looked up through his bangs. His eyes were dark, way too old for his face. They looked tired, exhausted. "Did you lock it?" he asked. His voice was a whisper. "The door?" "Yeah, I locked it." "Good," he said, returning to his drawing, "because the others will try to get in. They're hungry tonight." I let out a nervous laugh. "The others? Is that a game you play?" Caleb stopped moving his hand. He looked at me with a seriousness that chilled my blood. "It's not a game. They want my skin. They want to wear it." I swallowed hard. "Okay. Well, how about we order some pizza?" "We can't," he said. "Delivery driver might be one of them." I decided not to push it. I sat on the couch, pulling out my phone. No service, of course. The Wi-Fi network didn't even show up. I was completely cut off. Time seemed to move slower in that house. The ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway was the only sound, echoing like a heartbeat. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Around 8:30 p.m., the first knock came. It wasn't a normal knock. It was 3 slow, heavy thuds against the solid wood of the front door. Thud, thud, thud. My heart jumped into my throat. I stood up instantly. Caleb didn't even flinch. He just curled his knees to his chest. "Hey!" a voice called out from outside. It was muffled by the wood, but it was distinct. It was the father. "Hey, open up. We forgot the keys. Let us in real quick. We're running late." I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. It was just the dad. He sounded annoyed. I started walking toward the hallway instinctively. "Don't," Caleb said. He hadn't turned around. "Caleb, it's your dad. He forgot his keys." "That's not him," the boy whispered. "Listen to the spaces." "What?" "Listen to the spaces between the words." I stopped in the hallway a few feet from the door. The voice came again. "Open the door. We just need to come inside." Caleb was right. The cadence was wrong. It sounded exactly like the father, pitch perfect. But it was flat. There was no emotion. It sounded like a recording being played on a loop, or like an AI trying to mimic human speech, but failing at the rhythm. "I can't do that, sir," I called out, my voice shaking. "You told me not to open the door for anyone." There was a pause, a long, uncomfortable silence. Then the doorknob jiggled. It wasn't a polite attempt to turn it. The handle was ripped violently back and forth. The door rattled in its frame. Clack, 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 clack. It sounded like an animal trying to claw its way in. "Let us in," the voice screamed, but now it was distorted. It sounded like 2 voices speaking at once, one high, one low. "We want in. Open the door." I backed away, terrified. "Go away," I yelled. The banging stopped instantly. Silence returned to the house, heavier than before. I looked back at Caleb. He was coloring again. "They're testing you," he said calmly. "Don't fail." The next 2 hours were an exercise in psychological torture. The house seemed to be alive. I heard footsteps walking directly above us on the 2nd floor, heavy bootfalls pacing back and forth. But there was no one else in the house. I heard scratching sounds coming from inside the drywall, like rats or fingers trying to dig their way out. At 10:45 p.m., the landline phone in the kitchen rang. It was a shrill, piercing sound that made me jump out of my skin. I stared at it. It rang 4 times, 5 times. I picked it up slowly. Hello? Static, just white noise, like the sound of an empty channel on an old TV. Hello? I asked again. Then a voice cut through the static. It was my voice. Hello, the voice on the other end said. It was a perfect recording of what I had just said 2 seconds ago. Who is this? I asked. Who is this? My voice echoed back instantly. Then the voice laughed. It wasn't my laugh. It was a wet, guttural sound. Did you check the basement door? My own voice asked me, mocking. I slammed the phone down. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely breathe. The basement door. It was in the hallway right next to the kitchen. I walked over to it. It was closed. I reached out and tried the handle. Locked. But as I pulled my hand away, I heard it. Breathing. Slow, rasping breaths. Coming from the other side of the basement door. Right against the wood. Someone was standing there, inches away from me, just listening. I backed away into the living room, grabbing Caleb's arm. We're staying right here, I whispered. We are not moving until midnight. But biology doesn't care about fear. At 11:45 p.m., 15 minutes before freedom, Caleb looked at me. I'm thirsty. Can you wait? No, I sighed. Okay, kitchen, quick. We walked into the kitchen. I kept looking at the basement door, expecting it to burst open, but it stayed shut. I grabbed a glass and filled it from the tap. They're getting louder, Caleb whimpered, pressing against my leg. It's almost midnight, I said, trying to comfort him, though my own voice was cracking. Your parents will be back soon, it's almost over. That's when I saw it. I had missed one. In my haste to check the room earlier, I hadn't noticed the microwave. It was a modern one, with a sleek, black glass front. It wasn't covered. The kitchen lights were dim, creating a perfect mirror effect on the black glass. I caught my reflection in the microwave door as I turned to hand Caleb the water. I froze. In the reflection, I was standing in the kitchen. But I wasn't holding a glass of water, and I wasn't looking at Caleb. My reflection was looking directly at me. And it was smiling. It wasn't a human smile. It was wide, stretching from ear to ear, exposing gums and way too many teeth. They were needle sharp, like a shark's. My reflection's eyes were pitch black, devoid of any white. I couldn't move. It felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. My reflection slowly raised its hand. It waved at me. Then it reached forward and tapped on the glass from the inside. Tap, tap, tap. The sound didn't come from the glass surface. It came from inside the microwave. Let me out, my reflection mouthed. I could read its lips perfectly. I want to play. I grabbed Caleb, dropping the glass of water. It shattered on the floor, loud as a gunshot. Don't look, I screamed, shielding his eyes. My reflection threw its head back and laughed, a sound that vibrated through the metal of the appliance. It started pounding on the glass from the inside with both fists. Bang, bang, bang. The glass started to crack. A spiderweb fracture appeared in the center. Let me out, it screamed with my voice. I dragged Caleb into the corner of the kitchen, putting my body between him and the microwave. I grabbed a steak knife from the counter, holding it out with a shaking hand. The pounding got louder. The cracks in the glass were spreading. A black, oily substance started to leak from the door seal of the microwave, dripping onto the counter. I closed my eyes and started praying. I don't even believe in God, but I prayed. Please, I whispered, please make it stop. Dong. The sound was deep and resonant. Dong, the grandfather clock in the hall. Dong. It was midnight. Instantly, the pounding stopped. The laughter cut off. The oppressive heaviness in the air evaporated like mist. I opened my eyes. The microwave glass was intact. No cracks, no black oil. Just my own terrified pale face reflecting back at me. Normal. I heard the sound of tires on gravel outside, then a key turning in the lock. The front door opened. "Honey, we're home," the mother's voice called out. It sounded normal this time, cheerful. They walked into the kitchen. They looked exactly as they had left. Impeccable clothes, perfect hair. But now their smiles seemed genuine. "Did you have a good night?" the mother asked, looking at the shattered glass on the floor. "Oh dear, an accident?" I dropped the knife. It clattered on the tiles. I think I need to go," I stammered. I couldn't breathe. I just wanted to be out of there. The father stepped forward, looking past me at the microwave. He inspected it closely. He ran a finger along the doorframe. "Did you follow the rules?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," I lied. "Mostly." He turned to me and nodded slowly. "Good job. Caleb can be difficult." He looked down at the boy who was still hiding behind my legs. "He's safely contained for another night." The barrier held. Contained. Barrier. I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. "Here," the mother said, pressing the thick envelope into my hand. "You earned this." I didn't count it. I grabbed the envelope and bolted. I didn't say goodbye. I ran out the front door, jumped into my beat-up Honda and peeled out of the driveway. I drove like a maniac. I ran 2 red lights. I didn't stop until I was 3 towns over, parked in the brightly lit parking lot of a 24-hour gas station. I sat there for 20 minutes, just gripping the steering wheel, trying to stop shaking. Finally, I looked at the envelope in the passenger seat. $500, rent, food, survival. I reached over and tore it open. I dumped the cash onto the passenger seat. 5 crisp $100 bills. I turned on the overhead light to count them. I froze. The bills. They felt real. The paper was right. The green ink was right. But then I looked closer at the portrait in the center of the bill. It wasn't Benjamin Franklin. The face on the bill was me. It was a perfect engraving of my own face, but in the portrait I was smiling that same twisted, ear-to-ear grin I had seen in the microwave. I flipped the bill over. The back was normal. I checked the next bill. Me again, screaming this time. The 3rd bill, me crying. The 4th bill, me with my eyes gouged out. The 5th bill didn't have a face. It just had text, written in that fancy governmental font. "See you soon." I threw the money out the window. I watched it scatter in the wind across the parking lot. I drove home, locked my door, and pushed my dresser against it. That was a week ago. I haven't slept more than an hour at a time since. Because yesterday, I went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. I kept my head down, refusing to look in the mirror. But when I opened the medicine cabinet to get my toothpaste, I saw it. On the inside of the cabinet door. A small reflective metal bracket, and in it, a tiny version of me was waving, and it whispered, clear as day, "I'm still hungry."